February 1959. The Ural Mountains, Soviet Union. 9 experienced hikers are camped on a remote mountain slope. Temperature, minus 30 degrees Celsius. Sometime during the night, all 9 of them cut their tent open from the inside and ran out into the darkness, barefoot, without coats, without boots. All 9 of them died. When investigators arrived weeks later, they found something that made no sense. The tent had been cut from the inside, meaning they chose to leave. The footprints in the snow were calm, not running, walking. What drove 9 experienced Soviet hikers out of their tent and into minus 30 degrees, barefoot, has never been explained. This is the Dyatlov Pass incident.
Igor Dyatlov was 23 years old, a student at the Ural Polytechnical Institute in Sverdlovsk, an experienced hiker and skier who had led multiple winter expeditions. His group of 9 included 7 men and 2 women, all students or recent graduates, all experienced, all prepared. Their goal: to reach the summit of Mount Otorten, a grade 3 difficulty winter hike, the highest possible Soviet classification for a ski trek. They set out on January 23, 1959. One member turned back after 3 days with a bad knee. The other 9 continued. They were never seen alive again. On the evening of February 1st, the group stopped to make camp on the slope of a mountain called Kholat Syakhl. In the Munsi language, Kholat Syakhl means dead mountain. Investigators later noted something strange. The group had chosen to camp on an exposed mountain slope in brutal wind and minus 30-degree temperatures, when a sheltered forest was less than a mile away.
Why did they camp there? No one knows. Their last diary entry was written that evening. It was cheerful. They talked about the weather, the route, their plans for the next day. There was no sign that anything was wrong. Sometime after midnight, something happened.
When the group failed to send their scheduled telegram on February 20th, a search party was dispatched. On February 26th, they found the tent. It had been cut open from the inside, not torn, cut with a knife from within. The hikers' belongings were all still inside. Boots, warm clothing, food, equipment, everything they needed to survive. Leading away from the tent were footprints. 9 sets of footprints heading down the slope toward the tree line. The footprints were calm, evenly spaced, not running. Over the next 2 weeks, the search party found the first 5 bodies. They were scattered across the slope, dressed only in underwear and thin clothing. Death by hypothermia. But on their faces, expressions of absolute terror. In May, after the snow melted, the remaining 4 bodies were found in a ravine under 4 meters of snow. What the investigators found defied explanation. Lyudmila Dubinina, 20 years old, had her tongue, eyes, and part of her lips missing. Not removed after death, missing. Several hikers had severe internal injuries, broken ribs, a fractured skull, consistent with the force of a car crash, but no external wounds, no bruising on the skin. How do you break someone's ribs without leaving a mark on their skin? The clothing of 2 hikers tested positive for radioactivity, and in the final diary found at the camp, a joke entry written in a mock newspaper format. The last line read, "From now on, we know that snowmen exist."
The Soviet government launched an official investigation. It lasted 3 months. Their conclusion: the hikers died as a result of, quote, "an unknown compelling natural force." The case was immediately classified, sealed for 30 years. The pass where they died was closed to hikers for 3 years, with no explanation given.
The chief investigator, Lev Ivanov, later said in a 1990 interview, after the Soviet Union had collapsed, "I suspected at the time, and am almost sure now, that these bright flying spheres had a direct connection to the group's death. I was ordered to classify this information."
In the 6 decades since, investigators, scientists, and researchers have proposed dozens of theories. 4 stand out. Theory 1: avalanche. In 2021, Swiss researchers published a study suggesting that a rare, small slab avalanche could explain the tent damage and the internal injuries. The hikers fled, were caught by the snow, suffered crushing injuries, and died of hypothermia.
The problem: no avalanche debris was found at the scene. The footprints leaving the tent were calm. And the Russian Avalanche Institute says the slope gradient was too low for a natural avalanche.
Theory 2: infrasound. Some researchers propose that wind conditions in the Ural Mountains can create infrasound, low-frequency sound waves below human hearing that can cause extreme panic, paranoia, and hallucinations. The hikers may have been driven mad by sound they couldn't even hear.
Theory 3: military weapons testing. The Soviet military conducted secret tests in the Ural region during the 1950s. The radioactive clothing, the strange injuries, the immediate classification of the case. Some investigators believe the hikers stumbled into a weapons test and were killed by a shockwave or experimental weapon.
Theory 4: something else entirely. The flying spheres mentioned by the chief investigator. The name of the mountain: Dead Mountain. The missing tongue. The expressions of terror. The calm footprints leading away from a tent they had cut open themselves. Some things don't fit any theory, and 65 years later, no one has explained them.
In 2019, the Russian government reopened the Dyatlov Pass case. After 2 years of investigation, they officially concluded a slab avalanche. Most researchers disagree. The pass was renamed after Igor Dyatlov. Every year, hikers visit the site, some to pay their respects, some looking for answers.
9 experienced people, at the peak of their abilities, fled their tent barefoot into -30 degrees. They walked calmly down a mountain in the dark, and they all died. What did they see? What did they hear? What drove them out of that tent?
We still don't know. What's your theory? Leave it below. I read every comment. And if you want more mysteries like this, cases that governments classified, deaths that were never explained, subscribe. There are more stories waiting.